1078 officer in need.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1078 Project podcast. Hey, if you're new to the podcast, a little bit about our organization. The 1078 Project is a nonprofit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal here at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement and their family as they navigate the difficult times surrounding an officer-involved shooting. In November of 2022, I was involved in an officer-involved shooting, and the days and weeks that followed left me feeling alone and without a lot of help. My goal and the goal of our organization is to ensure that no other officer and no other law enforcement family has to go through that. With that being said, today we have a guest that has given the ultimate sacrifice to the law enforcement community. She is the wife of Officer Blake Snyder, who died in the line of duty. She's a small business owner, she's a mom, and she's an overall fantastic human being. This episode really struck me in her resilience and her ability to live out the gospel really stuck with me. So I think you guys will really enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the other side, boys. Welcome into the 1078 Project podcast. We're back, and today's guest is Elizabeth Tucker. How you doing?
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited.
Oh, me too.
I really wanted to have you on. I just kind of like shot my shot on Instagram. I was like, hey, hi, how are you? Do you mind coming on to my tiny podcast?
Happy to be here.
I'm really excited for you to tell your story and for people to kind of get to know you as a person. That's kind of the goal with the podcast, is for people to see the men and women behind law enforcement as humans. So I'd like to get into like your story, who you are as a person, before we dive into what happened with Blake. So,
sure.
Were you St. Louis native?
Granite City, so over on the
close,
Illinois side.
Close, yeah.
I grew up in Granite City my whole life. I lived there until I got married to Blake and moved out. But my dad was a cop for 30 years in Granite City, so we knew everybody in this tiny little town. And then my mom had her business there that she's still running as well. So Granite City was my hometown.
What did mom do? What was her business?
So my mom and my dad actually started, at the time it was called New Beginnings Pregnancy Health Centers, where they helped counsel, and still help, counsel young women that are newly pregnant and they don't really know what to do. But it's from a Christian side of it, so they try to counsel them out of having abortions and into keeping their babies. And then they provide all of the resources they might need, adoption services, any kind of supplies that the mom might need. My mom has helped, I can't even count how many women, thousands of women have their babies at the hospital. Like, my mom went to the hospital with them because they had no one else.
No way.
And was there when they had their baby and helped her afterwards. And now they have 3 locations on the Illinois side. It's called Mosaic Health Centers now. So, but they have saved thousands and thousands of lives doing that.
That's so awesome.
Mm-hmm, yeah, wow. Really cool.
Hey, good job, Mom.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
She has an amazing testimony. I can't even, that is its own thing. She travels around the country telling it.
Oh, really?
She was suicidal at one point, tried to kill herself, but the gun wouldn't go off, and that was within, her first year of being married to my dad, and they weren't saved, so they didn't know Jesus.
No way.
And then she had, this revival moment, and then she got saved, and then he got saved, and how it turned into saving lives, really, was she was working in the abortion clinic in Granite City.
No way.
She was the one who actually, flushed the baby's remains. She was that person. And then she found God, and he completely opened her eyes, and she just turned her life completely 180 around and started saving lives instead of cleaning up the remains. So really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Growing up, so your parents are married and
Yeah, they got married in the 70s. I don't even know, in the 70s, but I'm one of 5 kids. So they had 5 kids every 5 years apart. So the youngest is who 27 now, and the oldest is 47. So we're all 5 years apart.
That's a big break. 5 years.
Yeah.
It's like restarting every single time.
Yeah. I mean, my mom, she said she loved it. She's like, once they turn like 4 or 5, you know, they can kind of take care of themselves a little bit while you have a baby.
That may
like
be
a
actually
newborn.
a good idea.
It is, but then I have Malachi and Naomi, and they're 5 years, and I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah, so I have a 5-year-old and 9-month-old.
Okay.
And it was like, and there's one in the middle too. So
Okay.
it was like,
It is a big jump,
it's
I
just
think.
like restarting. It's
Yeah.
like you finally get them almost self-sufficient.
Yeah, and you're
like
sleeping again, you know?
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
you're stepping back to changing diapers.
Yeah.
Changing diapers and
it's a
changing
lot.
diapers. Yep. So one of 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Do you play sports or anything growing up?
Yeah, I did gymnastics and competitive gymnastics for about 10 years. In that 10-year time span, I started when I was about 5 and ended when I was about 16. I went to all Granite City schools until my junior year of high school. Then I switched over to Collinsville Christian Academy, which was a tiny little private school, and I finished my last 2 years there. I graduated with 6 other people. So instead of the 400 I would have graduated with at Granite City.
6 other people?
Yeah, 6.
There were 6 people in your graduating
we're all
class.
best friends.
No way. Do
Yeah.
you guys still all talk to each other?
We're all still like friends. I don't see them, but everybody kind of moved away. We're all like in separate areas. A couple of us still live in St. Louis, but you know, like social media helps with it. But I mean, yeah.
That's insane. 6 people graduating school.
Yeah.
That was
Insane.
like just a room like this big, just like 6 sets of parents. Like, congratulations.
Our ceremony was very short.
Yeah,
you know,
all
compared.
6 of you.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. It was fun. It was good to experience all of the public school dynamic, and then switching to a tiny little Christian school where, you know, you had chapel every Monday and you had like Christian friends you went to youth group with. It was just a completely different dynamic. Now, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't a perfect little school, but I was bullied heavily in my freshman and sophomore year at Granite City within like the cheerleading realm. And man, I'm telling you, high school girls can be rough. They can be so hard. It's just, I was bullied in that realm. And I was like, Mom, I think I need to change. I had one friend that was at CCA, and I was like, she really loves it. It's tiny. I mean, it's like 20 minutes away, but I can drive. Me and my younger sister, she ended up going with me. And I made the switch, and I loved it, so I was happy.
Where are you in the 5?
I'm 4 out of 5.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's one younger than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you weren't the baby. But
No,
almost.
I wasn't even the middle child. Like, I'm kind of in that awkward second to last. But my parents did plan me. I was supposed to be the baby. Michaela was not. She was a surprise, you know, 40th birthday. My mom had her when she was 40.
40th birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So,
Woo.
I know.
That's scary.
I know. I am hoping I don't have babies when I'm 40. I'm done.
I'm hoping we had our last baby.
Yeah.
I got a boy. I think.
Yeah.
I think we should be done.
All right. Unless you get a surprise, which you'd be happy with.
Yeah.
It's not planned.
Yeah.
You know?
God has a plan and a will and a way.
That's true.
You know,
That's
whatever
true.
happens is whatever happens. But
Yes.
so did you go off to college?
I stayed home for college. I did a couple years at SWIC. So, growing up, like, you know, going to like a community college was like, oh, you're going to community college. So I was kind of embarrassed. But looking back on it, those 2
Super
years,
good decision.
oh my gosh, I saved so much money compared to all my friends that went to big universities. I saved so much money, and I lived at home. And then I switched, and when I was dating Blake eventually, and then I got married, and I finished at Webster University. So, yeah.
What'd you go to school for?
Biology. So I got my degree in biology with an emphasis in biodiversity. So it kind of covered, which is a 5-year degree instead of 4. It's like a specific degree that covers a lot of different areas of biology because I wanted to work with animals. I wanted to be at the zoo. I wanted to be a zookeeper, which I eventually
Didn't you
did.
do that? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. For about 5 years. It was the dream job. It was awesome. I love it. I miss every moment of it. So, but yeah, it was worth it.
So, you said what community college is it? SWIC. What is that?
Yeah, Southwestern Illinois College. So there's a location in Granite City, so it was like real close, and then there's a location in Belleville.
Okay, so you went there for 2 years?
A couple of years, did several of my gen eds, and then I switched over to Webster.
Okay. You said Dad was a police officer.
Yeah.
What was that like growing up?
It was so awesome. I thought we were so cool. My dad was so cool. He was this handsome, like really strong looking cop. And he was a cop in like the 80s, 90s. So it was a completely different dynamic back then than nowadays. Law enforcement, it was just different. But he was really cool. He had the patrol car, and it was a tiny little town. So like for dinner, he would come home and have dinner with us, which was really nice. And then go back out or whatever, because we were right down the street from the department, so awesome. But it was really, really neat. My mom loved being married to a cop. I mean, the boys that I tried dating didn't like it, but
I'm hoping that's the case. I'm hoping that I can scare off some of my daughter. My daughter's so cute. She's 5, and she's this tiny little petite blonde-haired, blue-eyed, just like so cute. I'm like, man, oh no,
just one day
I'm gonna be punished for all the terrible things that I've done in my life. So I'm hoping that maybe the police car in the driveway will kind of scare off some of the boys.
Yeah, we'll see. Or it's a challenge. You never know.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the boy.
True.
You said, did he do any like specialties, or was he just a patrolman? Or?
He was a patrolman for most of his career, and then he did do children's detective work for a little bit, but
that's tough.
It was really hard, and that's why he ended up going back to patrolman, because he had 5 kids at home, 5 young kids that he was going out and he was seeing all this awful stuff, and me growing up, my parents shielded us from that stuff. So I didn't even hear half of those stories until I was older, and I could comprehend it. But yeah, he had some really, really hard stories that he lived through with that. So he went back to being a patrolman. He loved being a street cop, like a beat cop, his whole career.
Do you know how big Granite City is like the whole city?
I feel like the last time I knew how many, it was like 35,000 people.
Okay. So it's like,
it's not like
not super tiny.
Yeah, it's not super tiny, but it's not huge.
It's like a steel mill town, right?
It is. Yes. That's the main income in Granite. Yeah.
Were your parents saved before you were born?
Yes. So
before all their kids were born?
My oldest sister, so Shannon was the first. She was 1 when they got saved. Okay. So the first year of their marriage, she was like, 1 or whatever. But that was like the worst part of their marriage. And then they became like newly revival Christians. Like they threw out every kind of secular music and no secular TV, nothing. Like growing up, we did not have cable. We didn't have movies that were PG-13 or above, like it was very, very conservative, strict in my household. Yeah. We didn't get to watch TV except for like 2 hours on Saturday, and that was like feature films for families.
What'd you think about that? Like as a kid, what was your...
As a kid, it kind of sucked, but I mean, growing up, now I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God my parents did that, because I mean, I had friends that had cartoons, and we'd go over their house and we'd watch like SpongeBob or things like that or whatever, or like to grandma's house. But I didn't really like it then. I felt like my parents were really strict, but looking back at it, they were protecting us in so many different ways that we couldn't comprehend it as a child. And now I'm older, and I'm thankful they did. It also forced us to read a lot of books. So I feel like, I don't know, that always makes people more intelligent. I feel like if you're reading a lot versus watching a screen, I feel that way. And I think that forced us to read all the time, and it helped. So I'm happy now. I wasn't happy then, obviously, as a kid that didn't get to watch morning cartoons like every other kid, you know?
I could see that. I always try and balance that with my own kids of like, what's too much? Like, where am I being... like too difficult on my kids. Yeah,
we have TVs in all of our house.
It's like a weird balance between like, I don't want to like shelter my kids to the point that they don't know like the reality of the world.
Right.
But I also don't want to just like throw them to the wolves. So I try and find that like happy medium.
Right.
Where I'm like showing them parts of the world and like trying to use like the bad parts of the world to like teach.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like
I think as my parents got older, they got a little bit more lax too, a little bit less strict. Like me, we have TV, we have cable, we watch all of the normal stuff, not like bad
Bluey.
Stuff, but like, lots
and lots of Bluey.
Yes, we love Bluey in our house. We love Miss Rachel too. If you don't watch Miss Rachel, she's a thing in our house. But we do limit screen time and all that stuff. They also read a lot too. So I think I balanced it a little bit more than my parents did. But it was also a different time whenever I was young versus when my kids are young now. Now, like, social media and technology is completely different than it was whenever I was 5 to 10 years old,
Yeah.
So.
It's so, like, social media is It's crazy how much it I had zero social media before I started the nonprofit. Like, I had no social media presence.
Yeah.
I just didn't, like, going through Ferguson and stuff like that. I found myself getting mad at people I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I was like, why am I mad at this person?
Yeah.
I don't even know who this person is.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting, like, angry at my phone, and finally I was like, I'm done.
Yep.
So
good for you.
Around Ferguson, I think, I was like, I drew the line in the sand and was like, I think I'm going to get rid of all my social media.
Good for you. I mean, I don't feel like you're missing too much, you know. I had initially got my social media so I could be like friends with my friends and hang out with my friends, but it's just broadened so much to where now like total strangers follow your entire life, which can be a good thing, but it can also be a really negative thing too. It's just what you allow in, what you allow yourself to like let into your heart and your brain, you know, to affect you mentally. So there's a fine line, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like I would have never been able to like communicate with you or have you on the podcast if it wasn't for social media. So like there's benefits to it for sure. It's just it is weird trying to balance like, you know, like posting a picture of my police dog with my kids and then I'm like, man, this picture of my kids is going on the internet. It's
I know.
weird, you know, but
I see that my one friend, she feels that way about her kids. Like she'll post a picture of her and her like daughter, but she'll put like an emoji over the face. I'm like, I mean, if anybody knows where you go, they can see what park you're at. You just posted like the park's name is in the background. They could just go to that park. They could take a picture of your child while you're there. It's like I feel like there's ways to protect your kids, and you can only do so much. I feel like because this world is a little bit scary, you know, and having them out in it is. You got to prevent it somehow, but I don't know. It's a fine line.
Yeah,
Social media.
Try and like trust God that like whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know. That's how I view pretty much my entire life. Though.
Good.
Like, hey,
that's the right way to
trust
view
God
it.
and
yes, and there's a plan behind everything.
Everything will figure its way up. So growing up, was it like church was big to you guys? You guys were always going to church? Yeah,
every Sunday, Wednesday, like. Still to this day, my mom is like very like, you need to be at church this many times a week, this many times or whatever. And yeah, like and we had home group too. So we had home group once a week.
What's home group?
Okay. Home group is kind of like a small group at church, but it's like you found like your group of friends and then you host it at your house. It's a small group. It's we called it home group growing up, and each family would host it every week. So we'd go somewhere else every week, and that family would host it. It's like church at home.
That's kind of cool.
Outside of church.
Yeah. I feel like that's like the cool, that's why I like this church is it's so community based. It's like everybody knows each other. It's a tiny church. There's only like, I don't know, maybe 100 to 150 people that go here.
Yeah.
And everybody knows each other. Like I know nearly everyone's first name.
Cool.
If someone new walks in the church, everybody knows, and everybody's like, you know, the old lady's like running over to introduce themselves.
Okay.
Like, hi, you know, like it's just like one of those like little churches where everybody's tied into each other and we're all doing things together, and you know.
I'm sure it's very supportive. That's
awesome.
awesome.
If like something happens to somebody in our church, the whole church kind of rallies around.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and they've been instrumental with the nonprofit too. Like our pastors like really helped and pushed everything along.
Neat.
And kind of guided me through everything, and
love it.
Yeah, so he's been a blessing as well. So you go to school, go to college, and then you said you started dating?
Yeah. Are you talking about Blake?
Just in general, yeah.
Yeah, I had a high school boyfriend when I went to CCA. I dated him for like 2 years until I graduated, and then that didn't end up working out. He went off to college in Indiana, so it was long distance. But coming off of that relationship, I had known Blake for several years at this point. Blake and I met at church, Destiny Church. It's not there anymore, but it was off Manchester and 270. And we were both small group leaders. And so I knew him for several years before we even got romantically involved at all. So we were like really good friends for a while, and I was dating this other guy. And then I broke up with that guy, and Blake and I kind of just like started hanging out at church more often. Then we started leading the same small group together. And then I kind of was still just seeing him as a friend. He was quite a bit older than me. He was about 9 years older than me.
Oh, really? I never knew that.
Yeah. So I just kind of saw him still as a friend, but like I liked him. It was that kind of weird thing.
Yeah.
And then one day he was like, hey, you want to go see this movie or whatever that's coming out? And I was like, oh, yeah, who all's going? I thought it was like a group thing. He's like, us? Yeah. I was like, oh, my gosh. Like it clicked in my brain. I was like, oh, my gosh, he's asking me on a date. And so I go and I tell my mom, like, Mom, Blake just asked me like to go see a movie, and like I didn't know.
Did he know your family pretty well?
Yeah, we all knew each other. But here comes the funny thing. And my mom's like, absolutely not. He's 9 years older than you. I love him, but he's 9 years older, you know. She just meant it like as a protective thing. And I was like, but Mom, you know, I want to. And she goes, go ask your father, you know, my cop dad. And I was like, okay. So I go and I'm like, Dad, you know, Blake, he wants to take me out. Like, what do you think? He's like, oh, absolutely, 100%. I was like, what? My mom goes, Mike, what are you talking about? He's 9 years older. And he goes, I worked with Blake. So come to find out, I didn't know this at this point. Blake worked at a company called YTB where after my dad retired from the law enforcement, he was like head of security for this company. And Blake was doing some kind of marketing for them. This was like years and years before that. And he's like, really? I knew Blake a long time ago before y'all even met him at church. He's a wonderful guy. Of course, Elizabeth can go date him. And my mom was like flabbergasted, you know? I was like, okay. So, and yeah, we didn't even know the connection between them at that point. So I went on a date, and it was history from there.
Was Blake in law enforcement then, or?
No, he was not. So we met at church because he was a small group leader and I was too, but he was also doing like digital marketing and like design for the church. So he actually got his degree when he went to college in architecture. So he was very artsy, very like design oriented. So he was doing all of like, you know, like the pamphlets for church and all of the website stuff. So that's what he was doing. He worked full time for our church.
Really? And what church was that?
Destiny. It was called Destiny. It's not there anymore. I don't know how many years ago it was. They stopped. The pastor moved. Anyway, it's not there anymore. But it was not denominational. It was, we loved it or whatever. And then he and I started dating, and he kind of got involved in my family. My brother was a cop at this point, my uncle, and my dad. So everyone, cops in my family, our family gatherings were all cop talk. So like the guys were always talking about their stories and everything at every family gathering. And Blake's kind of sitting there just listening. And one day Blake asked me, he's like, you know what? I'm really interested in what your family does, like what your dad did and what Justin's doing for the county. And what do you think if I went into the academy? I think the academy at that point, I have some kind of memory that there's a cutoff for the age that you could have joined the academy at that point. And I think it was like 29 or something.
Probably it was back when it was competitive.
Yes. And he's like, I think I'm at that age. Like I have this one opportunity. Like I think he was 29 at that point that I can get in right now, or it's just not going to happen. And what do you think, Elizabeth? And I was like, I mean, I didn't see him as a cop at all. I was like, you know what? If you want to do it, great. I know the cop life. You know, obviously, I would support you through it. At this point, we're dating, and we're about to get engaged when he talked about it. And I was like, maybe you should go talk to my dad and my brother first and see what they say. And he did. He like got together with them, and Justin, my brother, and my dad both said, you should try anything else first. And if you're not happy with anything else and then you go and do this, you know that it's for you. And
sounds like a cop's
take on it was. And Blake's like, I just feel called to do this. I feel like this is something I've prayed about and that God is telling me I should pursue. So he did. And he got into the academy, and he got a full paid ride through it. And he was going to have a job coming out with St. Louis County.
Did he go through St. Louis County's academy?
He did. Yeah. And he excelled. He was like extremely smart. He was very smart. He was like one of the top in his class. And he was just made for it. I think he just blossomed once he got there, and he loved it. So, yeah.
What'd your dad think about knowing that his daughter was going to be dating a cop? Because I know what I would think about my daughter dating a cop, and like our lifestyle's rough, you know, like we carry a lot of baggage.
Yeah. I never got any negative feelings from my dad with it. He was very supportive, and so was Justin, really, and my uncle. Everybody was very supportive. So I never felt like my dad had any reservations about it. Now, at this point, my dad was battling with cancer. He had been battling with cancer for 15 years at this point, and he was on the declining end. He passed away 6 months before Blake and I got married. Oh, no. And that was in this time frame. So my dad was very sick, but he was very supportive at that point. So
How long was your dad? Did he like work his whole career, like 20 years or 30 years or whatever?
He worked 30 years for
man, that's a long time.
Yeah, he loved every minute of it. He worked 30 years for Granite City. Then he worked for the mayor's office in Granite City. He was I don't remember if he was like personal security to the mayor or something. And then he ran for mayor, and he lost by like 300 votes, which was really close at the time. And then after that, he did security work for the hospital. He did all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then he got really sick, and then he was like had to stay at home. So
that stinks.
Yeah, it was awful for my family. But he actually, the first time he got it, I want to say I was like 8 or 9 years old, and they caught it in time. It was called adenocarcinoma, so it was a very rare type of cancer that was like on his spine. The first time they found it, they were able to cut it out. So they were able to do surgery and get it out, and he went into remission for about 7 years. And then it came back, and by the time they found it again, it was too far. It had spread to all his organs and everything. Like, so he did all kinds of chemo and experimental treatments, and it just declined. And it
How old were
awful.
you
When he
the
passed?
second time?
The second time when it came back, I was 17, and then I was 21 by the time he passed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a long battle.
Yes, very long, very battle, like very like painful for him. He was in a lot of pain throughout that whole time. By the time that he passed away, he was so ready to go and be with Jesus. He said it so many times. So yeah, it was rough.
That's like such a liberating feeling though, like as a kid or somebody else that's from the outside looking in. It's like knowing that they have that relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And like,
yes.
when all this is said and done, like they're going to be in a better place.
I know, and we'll see them again. So we hold on to that. Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So how long before that? So that was about 6 months before you guys got married.
Mm-hmm.
And was Blake already a cop by the time you guys got married?
He had just graduated the academy. So he was like, I don't even know if he was out of field training yet by the time we got married. It was around that time frame. But
and
yeah.
your brother was working at St. Louis County at that time too?
Yep. Justin's no longer a county, but he was a county cop for them for about 15 or 16 years for county. And then he retired, quit, and he's now a state representative for Missouri.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Doing big things.
What was it like at the beginning of Blake's career? Like for you?
It was definitely very different than being a cop's kid and being a cop's wife. It was very different. Growing up, I like kind of idolized my dad's job. I thought he was just so cool, all of his gear and everything. But looking back, they shielded us from a lot of the hard sides of law enforcement and being involved in law enforcement. And, I've talked to my mom so many times about it and how she loved it. She loved being a cop's wife, and so did I. Like, the coolest stories. But there were also a lot of dangerous moments throughout my dad's career, a guy that he had put away got out of prison, and he threw a Molotov cocktail through our front window. So there's a lot of things, and I didn't even know anything about that until I was older. So just a lot of those things were kept from us for good reason. But being a cop wife, I learned the other side of it and, had to learn how to cope with certain things and had to learn how to live with his schedule, and the schedule was the hardest thing I think that we had to deal with.
Was St. Louis County on 12s? They were 12s or 8s?
He was on 10s. He was on a 10. So he was on there were three shifts.
Yeah.
There were 3 shifts, and he was on 10s because we lived
I worked 10s for a period of time. I loved it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he loved it. I didn't love it. Yeah. He loved his schedule and the shift. He worked nights. So he would leave and he'd have to clock in, I think, at like 7 or 8. And then he'd be back at 7 or 8 because we lived in Edwardsville by the end, and it was an hour drive there and an hour drive back.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he didn't mind. He loved it. But I was like, you're gone half the day. So it was a learning process, with that. So.
How open was he about the things that he experienced at work? Because I found a pretty wide variety of cops are either really open with their significant other, or they're not really. Before my shooting, I didn't tell Kate anything that I did.
Yeah.
There were times that I'd be executing search warrants in North St. Louis, and I'd be like, "Hey, Kate, I'm getting called out," and she'd be like, "Okay, be careful."
Yeah.
You have no idea what I'm about to be doing. I kind of didn't really let her in on what I was doing.
Yeah.
How was Blake?
I would say he was kind of half and half. He would tell me about certain situations, and then there were lots of calls I didn't know about until after he passed away and he was taken. that I heard, and I was like, I'm kind of glad you didn't tell me about that, because I probably would have been panicking or anxious, you know. I also lived at that point because growing up as a cop's kid, I knew that there were risks, but I was just so used to it. So whenever I was with Blake, and my faith was very strong, so I prayed for him every single night. I talked to God about him all the time. So I just felt like it's not going to happen to me. Like, I'm pretty strong in my faith. I pray about him every night. It's just not going to happen to me. It's so rare, you know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of had this like cover over my eyes that I'm glad I did, because I lived a little bit happier than, you know, it's a little good.
My wife has only known me as a policeman.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
all I've ever done since she's known me.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
We met when I was 21 and I was already a policeman. So,
Okay.
like, all she's ever known is that. So I think she talks about that. She talks about how, like, she had the same feeling. Like, it will never happen. Like,
yeah, kind of like living in bliss. Like,
yeah.
Like I don't need to know, you know, it's not going to happen.
He works in a nice area. Like,
yeah.
He doesn't work in a really, really bad area. Like, the odds of something happening.
That's exactly
She was just
how I
so
was.
used to like, oh, my husband's a policeman.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Same. So, and I think that that's healthy. I think that's healthy for a cop wife, because it's, living, like, I was asked after Blake passed so many times, will you date a cop again? And I was like, absolutely not. It was so far out of my scope of, I will never do it again. Not because I don't love the job and I don't love the cop life, but because after I lost him, it just opened my mind up to so much more worry, anxiety, panic, and everything that I was blissfully unaware of before he passed. Yeah. And I wouldn't be able to do it again with another person.
That makes 100% sense.
It would just be awful. So I was like, no, it was never going to happen. And it didn't.
Yeah.
You know?
That makes sense, though. It's like, you know, our job is inherently very, very dangerous. And even as a policeman, you kind of take that same approach to things. You kind of like, you always want to stay in that mindset of like something may happen, right? Mm-hmm. But like, when you go to your 700th domestic call,
right?
Like, well, I've dealt with 699 of these.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
This is what's going to happen. I'm going to do this, and then everything's going to be fine. We're going to leave here.
You don't want to live your job in fear either, so you kind of have to do that.
Like, you can't live like that, because it's like, it'd be debilitating. Yeah. Like, you wouldn't be able to like function.
You wouldn't be able to do your job.
Yeah. Like, you'd just be. Yeah, it would be terrible. One of the things that our organization does now is we started like a wives group. We partner with like Walter's Walk and a counselor, and so just like so they understand, like wives understand like how a police officer's brain works, and like they do like some psychoeducation stuff, and then they also like it's like a safe environment for our wives to be able to spend time talking about like the difficulties, like the hard things about being a police officer's wife.
I would have loved to have something like that whenever I was in that realm. That's awesome.
It's like, you know, like the shifts. I think that's like, for my wife, I think that's the most difficult thing. She's a neonatal intensive care nurse. So like,
the
Are
you guys pretty opposite?
So she works 12s, I work 12s.
Okay.
Luckily we've been able to like, she doesn't work as much as she used to. So she like pulled back her hours to spend more time at home and stuff. Yeah. Which has been super beneficial. But it's a lot for her to like balance the scheduling and like, you know, she's way smarter than I am. So she does a lot of that stuff, you know, she does a lot of the scheduling and the difficult side of like law enforcement that like, unless you're a police officer's wife or a police officer, you don't understand.
You don't get it.
That's a huge thing for us, the scheduling. And then it was like her sending me back to work after, you know, my officer involved shooting and like realizing how quickly things can change. Yeah. That was a big thing for her too. Is like, she tried to go back to work right after my shooting and she couldn't.
Rough.
She went back to work, went to the hospital, and then got up to the floor and turned around and came right back home. Yeah. She just couldn't.
Well, good for her for recognizing that she couldn't, you know.
She just couldn't
try to power through it or anything.
Go back right away.
Yeah.
What is it like being a police officer's wife? Like before, obviously, you know, you're like a very small percentage of police officers' wives. But like, what were the things that stick out to you as like the difficult parts or the like super rewarding parts? Is there anything that really stands out to you?
There were so many. I definitely think the more rewarding parts outweighed the difficult parts, and that's what makes the job worth it. You know, I really enjoyed watching Blake and his personality evolve through his career, his 4 years, because when he went in, he was just a different person. Then at the end, he matured and he changed, but in all these positive ways where it was more, he was always like a very big helper for people, but it like astronomically increased with what his job did, and forced him to do. And I don't know, I really loved watching him do his job and just love it. He loved his job.
How old was he when he got into it?
So he was 33 when he passed, so 29. Yeah.
He's 29.
Mm-hmm.
You had to mature like a lot to become a cop.
Yeah.
Like I started when I was 21, so I was
Yeah.
like this young, dumb
Yeah.
kid, man. I was like, I just want to chase bad guys. And then, like I found myself like I had like very little friends
Yeah.
that were my own age. Like everybody that I hung out with like 40.
Or older. Yeah.
Because I had like all this life experience that I've gained in like a matter of a couple years. Like I just didn't have a lot of things in common with my own friends.
Well, yeah, it was kind of opposite for Blake because he was 29, and then a bunch of his like same class in the academy were like 21, 22, and he had one friend that was about his age, Matthias, and he was about the same age. He was older too, and they kind of clicked the best because they were in the same era of life, but yeah, you do have to mature really quickly once you became a cop. So yeah.
Was there anything that was different from being like a police officer's daughter to a police officer's wife, like sending him off for his first day of work? Hey everyone, Matt here. Hope you guys are enjoying the podcast so far. I promise we will get right back to the action soon. But first, I want to let you guys know about something new and exciting that the 1078 Project has lined up. We have officially dropped our own line of merch. The 1078 Project has partnered with the Crafty Midwestern Mommy, a local embroidery shop whose mission is to serve fellow small and large business professionals with their embroidery and sewing needs. We're starting off with a few options to choose from for both men and women who want to support the project and get some cool merch in return. We have t-shirts, polos, and even 1078 Project hats. To get yours, head over to the website. That's www.1078project.com. Scroll to the bottom and click the merch store button. It's that easy. So to support the 1078 Project and get your own merch, go to www.1078project.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, click on the merch store button, and that's it. Again, it's 1078project.com. Let's get back to the episode.
I never had any fear. I just didn't. I was never fearful before he was taken, like, at all. I was just so confident in who he was. He also, like, worked in a really good area. Like, the 3rd precinct of county is good, It's not the worst. It's not the easiest, which would be West County. But, it was just, I didn't feel like he was going off into danger. And really, my brother at the time for county was on the TAC team. So he was the one knocking doors down and going to bomb threats and all these like crazy things. So our family always thought if something was going to happen to one of our cops, it was going to be Justin, because he like statistically had the more dangerous position, versus Blake, who's just a beat cop. So we just didn't think it could happen to ours, So yeah, that part was hard, but I was never fearful ever. Yeah. So I think that's why I was so surprised when it happened. I was so like blown away.
Yeah. What was the beginning of your guys' marriage like?
Good. I mean, the beginning of any marriage, you have your ups and downs. And I think the hardest part for us was the scheduling. Like, I always go back to the scheduling because I was also full-time in school still. Then I got pregnant 6 months into the marriage on purpose. We wanted to start it quickly. So I was pregnant, full-time in school, and I was working part-time at the zoo. So I had a lot going on, and then he was working a lot of hours, and then he'd pick up overtime, so we could make some extra money because we didn't have a lot of money at the time. And I just think that was our biggest conflict, because I would be leaving for school or work as he was coming through the door. And, like, his parents came to watch my son, Malachi, when he was born, and, like, I just never saw him, I feel like. And he would get home. He'd be home for, he'd sleep, and then he'd be awake for a couple hours maybe.
I'm smiling because this is like, I need to give you my wife's
phone
number.
Like,
my wife went through nursing school as I was a cop. She was pregnant when she was going through nursing school. And it was like, so she had to do all of her prereqs and all the other things. And, like, I'm still a full-time policeman, and I'm a canine handler, and I was TFO'd at that point. So it was like, there's just so many things going on at once. Like, you
Yeah.
just felt like you, like, you just see each other, like, in passing. It's like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
the baby
You're
ate
more
at
like
this.
roommates,
Yeah, the
you
baby ate
know?
at this time. They need to eat at this time. We're
Yeah.
like,
It's
there's
hard.
yeah.
It's hard, but I think it's worth it. It was definitely worth it. And to see how much he loved his job. And he did a lot of drunk driving calls. Like, he loved catching drunk drivers. Like, he just excelled in it. He did it really good. He was really good at paperwork. Like, I know most cops just hate the paperwork,
That's
the
me.
report writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. He loved it, and he was really good at it. He's very, like, detail oriented. He got awarded by MAD twice, 2 years in a row for it. He had the highest amount of drunk driving arrests within county, like 2 years in a row. He was just really good at that.
You said he was on nights too?
Yeah, and he was on nights.
For the whole time?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I hated that. We got in a few fights because of it. Also because of county and how their, like, seniority level had worked at that time, where you had to be on a certain amount of years before you would get, like, thought about to get on days, you know, because all the older guys had the day shift, you know, so as soon as one of the older cops retired or something, then a position came open, and then they look at the next guy on seniority. So it took a few years, and then even when he, like, had the opportunity to do it, he still didn't want to do it because he liked getting drunk drivers, he liked the night shift, he just liked his supervisors, like, so we made it work.
What was the area that he worked?
Afton. So Afton, southwest area was the precinct. Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to picture Afton in my head.
Laclede Station Road, like, that leads into it. That's where our first apartment was. So, like, really close to Webster Groves and Shrewsbury.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a decent size area, like middle of the road for, like, crime and stuff like that. Like, not overly dangerous like the north.
No. It's like the good side of Gravois.
Yeah.
Like, there's the city side of Gravois, and then there's the county. And he was on the good side of Gravois.
So he was on patrol that whole time. Was he trying to get into, like, traffic or something? Is that what he wanted to do?
Yeah, and he didn't want to do traffic at first. He really wanted to do canine. And
my man.
Yeah, he really wanted to. He did try to get highway at one point. And they picked I can't remember her name. It was a female officer, and they needed more female officers within it. And I think that's why they kind of picked at that time. And then he's like, well, maybe I got a couple guy friends over in canine, like, I'll do that. And he was actually in the process of it. He had just done all of the steps for it when it all happened to him. So, and right before that, because we were having such issues we were living in Edwardsville at that point. We were having such issues with his scheduling. He was driving a lot. So that was like 2 hours on to the amount of time you're gone. So maybe we should look at being a cop over here in Edwardsville or Troy or something, you know, just closer so that you're closer, you know. Yeah. And we prayed about it, and he didn't really like the idea of it. He liked being with county. He was getting established with them. He'd have to restart somewhere else if he did, but he was willing to explore that avenue for me because I missed him. I wanted to see him more often, you know. Yeah. So he actually took the test and got interviewed for Madison County Sheriffs, and he went through the interview process, and they got to the point where they offered a job to him, and he's like, Elizabeth, and this was the big kicker, he was like, Elizabeth, I've prayed about this. I just feel like I'm not supposed to leave county. I'm going to cry about it. Because, you know, at that point, I was like, dang it, I was disappointed. You know, I wanted him to be closer. He would have been a lot closer, and maybe the scheduling would be different. And he's like, I just feel like I'm not supposed to leave county. I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I was like, okay. And being the supportive wife that I was like, okay, fine. You can stay with county. Like, that's how I felt. You know, I'm upset, but it's okay. Yeah. So he ended up staying, and that happened. His call happened like not even 6 months later. So afterwards, you know, after losing him, I was like, oh my gosh, like, he was supposed to be there. He was supposed to be, like, on that call. It was just, looking back at it, there was a whole big plan behind it. I just didn't see it in the moment, you know?
Yeah,
so
for sure. With your guys' schedule being so busy and, like, seeing each other in passing and you being in school, how'd you guys balance God in your whole scheme of things? That's something that my wife and I, like, to be 100% honest, we, like, force God into our lives to the point that it makes our lives more stressful. Yeah. Like, I try really hard to make sure God's a part of our lives.
I can feel that. I can feel that really big. I guess, I mean, that's a kind of a good way to say it. You force it because you are so busy. And We did too. We made sure we were at church every Saturday night. Destiny had Saturday night services at that point, and that's what worked the best for us if he wasn't working. And if he was working and we couldn't make Sunday work, I mean, we just didn't go at that point, and that was probably once a month that we weren't able to make church that week. But other than that, we did make sure we go because that was our time together, and like, we're going to use this time to go to church. We're going to put Malachi in. My family was there too. So it was kind of our fellowship time, but we needed that. So I'm kind of forcing it.
Yeah. And I felt like for my wife and I too, is like, having God at the beginning of our marriage was like so important. Because like I watched so many people around us and our marriages were like kind of suffering, and like we really like made sure that God was like a big part of our marriage, which made our marriage really successful. Like we had like especially in the beginning before kids came in, because kids are like a whole nother world. But before kids came in, like it was like I don't know, I was just so thankful that God was a part of our marriage, because it made everything so much easier. Yeah. Because she would do things like you just described. That's what made me think about it. We'd have a conversation about something, and she'd be like, listen, I'm going to surrender to you because I'm supposed to like surrender to you. And like, I'm trying to be supportive here. So like, I'm going to let you do what you want to do, but just know that like, that's a big ask, you know? Like, but she would do just what you just said. She'd be like, I'm
a little upset, but
I'm going to eat.
Right.
Yeah. So it reminded me so much of it.
Yeah, I get it.
Let's dive into Blake's incident. Okay. Can you describe it for us?
Yeah. Okay, so obviously he was working nights, so I was at home with Malachi. Malachi was 2 at this point, so it was just me and Kai at home. He said goodbye that night. He always gave me a kiss, and he said bye. So it was like a normal routine. All right, love you, bye, and he left, It was very normal for us. And I put Malachi to bed eventually, and I went to bed. And then I got a call at 5:20 in the morning. I want to say it was around, somewhere around there. And I look at my phone, it says Justin is my brother. I was like, why is Justin calling me? Like, it's like 5 in the morning. What is going on? So I answer the phone. I was like, hello, I'm like groggy. I'm not supposed to be awake for like 2 more hours. And he's like, Elizabeth, I need you to get Malachi, and I need you to get yourself together. Something's happened to Blake. And I was like, okay. And I hung up. I didn't even know what was happening. I was like, that was weird. And as I'm like getting up, I was like, why is my brother calling me? I'm still like in this like weird, I just woke up phase, and he told me to get myself ready and get Malachi ready. So I'm like, what happened to Blake? I was like, huh? Now it's starting to click. Now I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, what? And then I'm putting stuff together, and I call my brother back as I'm like getting Malachi up. And I'm like, what happened? All you said was something happened to Blake. What, was he shot? What happened? Yes, he was shot. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, I'm on my way with another officer. We're going to pick you up. We're almost there. I was like, okay. So I hang up. And at this point, what my brain is thinking is he got shot in the leg. He got shot in the arm. I mean, I don't know what the procedure for this is. This is very out of my norm. I don't know what's going on. And I don't think it clicked. And so my sister Hannah called, and she's like, Justin just called me, and I'm almost to your house too, and I'm going to ride with you over there. And I was like, why is Hannah coming with me? This is really weird. My brother and another officer fly up to our tiny little house in Edwardsville, fly up to our driveway. And they came in so fast, they grabbed me, grabbed Malachi. Hannah had just gotten there, so we all pile into the SUV, the county SUV. And I've never ridden in a car that was driving that fast in my life. And it's still not really processing at this point, and I'm just like, Malachi's like happy and bubbly, and he's like, hey, car, and he's like laughing in the back seat, and he's like touching all the stuff, and Hannah's like out loud praying. She's like, in Jesus' name, in Jesus' name, in Jesus' name. And I'm just like, what is I really just didn't know what was going on. I was like, and Justin's sitting in the front seat, and he's like staring out the front, and the officer is driving 120 miles per hour down 270. Like, we were going so fast. And I'm like, what, Justin? And he's not really saying anything to me. He kind of just reaches back, and he like pats my leg, which is not normal for my brother. My brother's very talkative. He's very loud, and I'm still not getting it, I was like, Justin, what's happening? I don't know what's going on. And we finally get to the hospital, and we're about to pull into the parking lot, and Justin gets a call as we're pulling in, and I'm just watching him, and he's like, yes, thank you, sir, I understand, yes, and he like hangs up. I'm like, well, what was going on? And he kind of just like, sorry, he like reached back, sorry,
it's okay,
and he just like put his hand on my leg, and I was like, is he dead? What? And he goes, yes, Elizabeth, I'm sorry. And I didn't really get it until that moment.
You want to take a break?
Just a second. Sorry.
All right. I'm going to cry with you. It's okay. I told you I would. It's just such
Do you need a tissue?
No, I'm all right.
Sorry. Tell me if my makeup starts running.
I will.
So I don't look like
I'll be 100% honest with you.
Okay. All right. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so we get out of the car, and I'm still not even crying at this point because now a shock has taken over. I'm like, what? And we pull up, we get out, and we're walking in, and it was just like this line on either side of cops from everywhere. I mean, it wasn't just county, it was cops from everywhere, like every department from the St. Louis area. And there's guys over here bawling their eyes out. There's guys over here just staring at me. You know, there's women over there like staring at me. There's just so many people and cops, and they were like crying. And that's what I remember. And I'm carrying Malachi in. Hannah's carrying the diaper bag, and Justin's like holding my arm. And they take me in, and Justin's like, we're going to go see him. And I said, okay, I don't want Malachi to see anything. So he's like, yeah, we're going to take him into another room. So I don't even know who. Like, this is such a blur. I'm trying to tell you things that I remember because thinking back, like, my brain kind of took over and blocked out a lot of stuff. And that's what the trauma does to you. Mm-hmm. Some lady took him, Malachi, and he's, like, happy and bubbly, and he's laughing. And, like, it was just so blissfully unaware, thank God. They took him, and then we went into the room, and, like, Justin led me in, and, like, I collapsed. Like, I saw him, and I, like, collapsed, and I don't know who caught me, but several arms caught me and put me in a chair because he was, he had already passed. So, come to find out, they say he, like, when he was shot, he shot and immediately died. So they worked on him for a long time at the scene and then at the hospital, but he didn't even make it past the actual spot. So what had actually happened, once they explained to me, was it wasn't even his call. So he was about to get off of his shift. He was almost done. Like, I think he was like less than an hour away from coming home.
Yeah.
And his really good friend Johnny, it was his call that he was supposed to go to for a domestic, some kid that they had previous interactions with. They knew this guy, they knew what he was about and everything, and he was at his ex-girlfriend's house and making a ruckus, and the mom of the girl called or whatever. And Blake's like, actually, hey, like, he gets on the radio, he's like, I'm really close, like, I'll beat you there, Johnny, I'll go first. And Johnny's like, okay, I'll catch up with you or whatever. And he shows up, and the kid, I say kid, but he was a grown man. He was just young. He was 18 when it happened, like, just turned 18. But he had been, like, harassing his ex-girlfriend and knocking on the doors and everything. But by the time Blake got there, he was in his car, and his car door was kind of, like, halfway open. And Blake had dealt with him before. So he was like, I know this kid, you know, I'm just gonna, you know, whatever. I know it, Johnny. They're talking back and forth. He was like, I'll just tell him to calm down, you know. So he gets out of his car, and he's, like, walking up to the back, like what you guys are normally supposed to do. And he's talking to him, and he says, come on, get on out. And he's, like, starting to walk up to the car, and the guy just pops out of his door and shoots Blake. And it hit him in the face, and it was, like, automatic. And at that point, Johnny had just pulled up, so Johnny saw, like, everything happen. He got out of his car and started shooting the suspect, and I think he shot him 7 or 8 times. But that's what happened, and then they worked on Blake there, and then they took him to the hospital. So, and I didn't find out all of that until I'm sure they told me at the hospital, but I can't remember it. It was like just complete shock. I remember being in the room and sitting next to him, and this is like really, this is a lot. So whoever's listening, like it's very detailed, but the sheet was up to his chin. So like, because he was actually shot in the chin, like it went up through his chin. And so it was like covered up to his lip or whatever, and like his whole body. So I could see everything else. And I was like, I like asked, there were so many men in this room, like men in suits and officers, like it was packed, and my family. And I was like, can I like hold his hand? Like, am I allowed to touch him?
Oh my God.
And it said no, because his body was a crime scene. So I didn't even get to touch him. It's really hard. So all I could do is just sit there with him.
It's just so frustrating because it's like, once again, it's like at the end of the day, that man is a human.
I know.
You know,
I know what they were trying to do.
I know,
you know,
too.
I know what they were doing.
But like, you know, these are moments in your life that you'll never ever forget.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like,
yeah,
I understand it. I do understand it, but at the same time, it's like, at what point do we forget that everybody involved in this is a human?
I know. It was hard. And then, like, what made it, like, harder at that point was I had called Peggy and Dick, his parents, when I was in the car on the way there, and I didn't know anything at that point. And I was like, hey, guys, like, you need to get to the hospital. Like, Blake's been shot. That's all I know. So, like, get up and get to the hospital. And they said, okay. So they didn't get there until probably, like, I want to say, like, 45 minutes after me. So I'm sitting in there, and then they get in there, and Peggy walks in, and she's, like, hysterical, and she threw herself on him. Like, she was, like, hugging him, and I remember them, like, having to, like, peel her off.
Oh, my
You know, and it's just so traumatic for everybody involved. It was just really hard because we weren't allowed to touch him because, we'll come to find out, because we didn't know any of it until, like, the trial or pre-trial, really, for us. But his body, the bullet had, like, shattered, like, gone in, and it had bounced around inside, like, hitting all the main things. You know, it was very, like he did not make it past the shooting. So his body was very important to keep intact on how it was. So I understand them not wanting us to touch him. It was just really hard in that moment not being able to. Yeah. You know, so sorry.
You don't have to be sorry. And Malachi was just hanging out.
Yeah, in another room. He did not see him again until the funeral, whenever we were allowed to see him in the casket, which I let him see him for a second, but it's very odd. And to this day, I have I
remember something about watching him, like, saying daddy as he was walking
that was
down
on camera. They caught that on the news. That was when we were walking in behind the casket into the church. And I don't know how, I didn't really say to Malachi, like, he's in there. He kind of just knew, and he was like, oh, daddy. And he was saying it as we were, like, that was so hard. So hard, because he didn't really get it. He's 2. Yeah, think about a 2-year-old, like, dealing with this, and all of a sudden, like, you say bye to your dad, and then they're not there anymore. So that was rough.
Yeah, I remember watching it, and I was like trying not to cry watching him.
Yeah, it was hard. It's more of like, I feel like it's a blessing and a curse that he was 2, because it's a blessing that he didn't have to experience the grief like I had to and all of us had to, because we understood what was happening. But also the curse side of it is, like, he doesn't have him now from 2 on, you know? Like, I don't even know if he'll have any memories. I don't remember when I was 2. I don't think I have any memories from when I was that young. Yeah. So that's the hard part of it, is he'll really only know him through all of our stories and what we say about him and pictures. So, yeah.
So after the hospital, where do you guys go?
We went to my brother's house. I could not go back to my house. My house, for me personally, and everyone who deals with trauma and loss deals with things differently. And in me personally, locations played a big part in my triggers. So, like, we put so much hard work into that tiny little house that we could barely afford, you know? We put up the fence ourselves outside. Like, I couldn't go back. especially in that moment. So we went to my brother's house, which was out in Wildwood. And we did like that first like full day. Everything was there. Like all the chiefs gathered there, and like Backstoppers met us there, and all of that stuff. Which is that day is really a big blur. I just remember being there. I remember people coming, and I remember curling up in my brother's bed, and that's really all I remember. So yeah. And then after that, I went and stayed at my mom's house in Granite City until the funeral. So,
if you could describe the first week, what would you like? Like the first week, if you had to put it into like words, how would you describe it?
A blur.
Yeah.
Really hard to comprehend what life is going to look like now, because for me, Blake was the one who paid all the bills. He took care of insurance. He took care of all of the adult stuff, I should say. I would never, before marrying him, I never got out on my own. I lived at home, and then I went straight into being a wife. Yeah. So I never learned.
Those 9 years really paying off.
Yeah, it was. He was great. He did all that stuff. He had experienced a lot of life before I had. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I didn't even know where our bills were. I didn't know passwords to anything. Like, he was in charge of all of that stuff. And now I tell everybody, like, you should be independent in your own way and learn how to pay bills and learn how to deal with retirement and insurance and everything, just in case something like this happens, and then you're on your own. Because I had a lot of learning to do afterwards. Mm-hmm. And thankfully Backstoppers came in, like, to help with all of that stuff, with like even like counseling stuff and helping us find the right lawyers and all that different kind of stuff. So I'm thankful I had a really good community and lots of supporters afterwards. But that first week was a lot of, I didn't go back to the house. I didn't stay another night in that house.
Really?
No, I couldn't do it. I went back and I stayed in the car, and my girlfriend went in and got my clothes and Malachi's stuff, so that I couldn't even man. And after that happens, like, they go through all your stuff. Like, they took like things, like they checked our guns that we owned and all of this different stuff, just in case, because it was a homicide. So they were going through our entire house too. And then a little bit of my pride was like, everybody's going through all my stuff. My house is a mess. Like, those are the things you're kind of thinking about, because you're in shock and you just don't know what's going on, And so anyway, so then I went and stayed with my mom until we could figure out where I was going to live at that point, because I anytime thinking about going back to the house, I went straight into a panic.
It's like the real practical things, I think, are like, what's life going to be like raising Malachi on my own? How am I going to afford to live in a house by myself?
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to.
Like all those like real practical things that, like, I don't know. For me, it would just be overlooked. You don't even think about those things.
No. My brother Justin's the one who helped me go through all of our mail to figure out what companies I needed to contact. And there's so many things that you have to do after your person passes, like changing names on everything. And it's just a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And when the whole city is watching you, it makes it even a little bit harder, Yeah. And whatnot. And in that first week, I didn't eat for I want to say 8 days. And not because I wasn't hungry. It was more of I just, I don't know how I'm supposed to live. I don't know. I wasn't suicidal. I never was I want to kill myself or I want to die. I was more of I don't want to be here. I don't know how to function. I don't know what to do. And that included putting food in my mouth. I couldn't function.
How did you balance that relationship with your son?
Everything with him was different. My mom instinct and my mom part of me kicked in real fast. Everything with him was normal, and I'm taking care of him and everything. And trying not to cry in front of him. And of course it did happen, but
Why'd you try not to cry in front of him?
I was trying to keep everything as normal as possible. In this time frame, we saw so many different people. People were coming and going, and people were talking about Blake, and then people were talking about him being shot. I'm trying to protect Malachi from that stuff. Whenever you're that young, you're so impressionable, and certain things that you could hear could stay with you forever, could affect you. So I want to protect him, but I also need to be a good mom, and I also don't want to live. There were so many emotions and things going through your brain that it was just really hard. And my body went into shock. I don't remember what day it was. It was when I was living with my mom before the funeral. So sometime in that first week-ish, that my body went into shock, and they had to rush me in a patrol car to the ER. And they eventually told me I was dehydrated. I need to eat. And my body had like just totally went into shock from, when people say like they die of a heartbreak, like you can fully die from a heartbreak, like 100%. It is a physical, I felt like my heart was like falling out of my physical body. Like it was just so, so terrible. But we made it through. Yeah. Thankfully, eventually.
How long was I can't remember. How long was it before the funeral?
12 days. It wasn't a week, but it wasn't 2 weeks. So maybe like 11 days. Okay. There was a lot to prepare for.
Yeah. Did you play a big part in that?
Thankfully, Justin and my mom and all the big heads of the county police department took care of everything. Like they came to me to make decisions, but they called everyone and they set it up. And so I want to say I made decisions, but I didn't because I was in shock. It was just very, very hard. And that was me personally. I know some women, I've known some widows that the day that they lost their person, they went into work mode and they just completely knocked all of that stuff out on their own, didn't need any help. Me, I was like, I'm in shock mode and I don't know what to do with my life and I don't know how to function. I don't even know how to take a drink right now. So it's just how your body copes and how your brain copes with trauma. And that's the crazy thing. If you haven't experienced some kind of trauma or loss or things like that, you can't understand it. It's just really, really hard to describe to someone who hasn't,
A lot of the things you're saying, my wife lost her brother young. And a lot of the things that you're saying, I can see, and her losing her brother. And
it's so hard.
Just a lot of I don't know how to function. I just taking that next step forward, you don't know what the next step really is.
Right.
It's like you're just kind of
there
in limbo.
Yeah.
Of were there any things at the funeral that were a must? Is there anything that you're I definitely
the songs that we played were definitely musts and that we picked. And Blake always wanted a closed casket. And, we had that conversation maybe once, maybe twice about if I die, what do you want to happen? If you die, what do you want to happen? Never thinking that it was actually going to happen. Yeah. But he did say, he was like, I don't want an open casket. No matter how I die, if I'm old, if I'm young, I don't want people looking at my body. That's not me. And so I honored that wish. Some people weren't so happy with that because they wanted him to be viewed and shown, and me being the wife, thankfully I had the say, I was first say on that stuff, and I said that was his wish. He didn't want an open casket. And the funeral home, they did a wonderful job because he was shot here, reconstructing him and making him look wonderful as much as you can. What really bothered me about him so we had his casket open for the family to come in and say goodbye, and then we closed it.
Did you do a final good?
We did. Me and Malachi went in first, just ourselves.
Every time you say Malachi, it gives me stinking chills.
He didn't really get it. He was just he kind of was a little confused. He looked and he was like, huh, and then I gave him to my friend and she took him, and then I had my moment with him. And I remember looking at him and I was like, they did a great job, but he had this beautiful butt chin. I loved his butt chin. He had this beautiful dimple in the middle of his chin, and it was gone. It wasn't sorry. Because they had to, reconstruct and everything, and it was gone, and that made me sad. So, it wasn't him. He's not there. It's his earthly body. He's in heaven. But, I said bye. And
did it seem like it filled any of the void without being able to say goodbye to him at the hospital or touch him?
No. And so I have this regret because
And I don't know how many people, I don't know if I've told many people, whenever he said goodbye the night before, we were actually in an argument.
Oh, man.
And I was being such a brat. I think it was about like scheduling or something. It wasn't anything big.
Sounds about right.
But I was being a brat. It was
Yeah.
my fault. And I was irritated at him when he left. And he still said, love you, bye. We still kissed. But I was mad at him. So I was like, love you, bye. Like, I guess I'll see you tomorrow. It was like we were irritated, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a regret of mine because I'm like, I'm such a brat. And now I tell anybody that I know that's in the same, like, position, you don't let him leave and you guys are in a fight. I don't care how bad it is. I don't care what it's over. Like, you don't leave in that mind state, you know?
Yeah, I've always, like, it's just such a weird thing. It's like, why? Just so weird that this is our job and this is my profession, you know, because
Yeah.
there are, I think that, like, I remember, like, looking at my wife, like, after we've been in an argument and I'm getting ready to leave and be like, stop.
Yeah.
Like, this could be the last time you see her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, like,
Well, I'm
it's
glad that
just-
you recognize that. And he did too, because he still, like, came over and said bye and
Yeah.
love you and everything. And I'm such a brat. I was such a brat. Because then I found out whenever he went on his break that night for lunch, he always went to the Schnucks nearby and he always, like, grabbed, like, a meal or whatever. And there was this little old lady that he always said hi to and asked, like, he had a relationship with because he was there every night.
Yeah.
And she told me afterwards, she's like, he was in and he was getting his lunch and he was just talking all these good things about you. He was saying how beautiful you were and how wonderful Malachi was. And of course, like, I'm such a brat. Like, he was still, like, bragging about me that night. And I was irritated at him when he left. Like, that was, like, my regret. Like, I was, you know, and everybody's going to have regrets. Even if it was, like, a good goodbye, you still regret that you didn't say something else or didn't do something else, you know. But I've matured since then. I have grown up since then, I think. And whenever you lose someone like that, whenever you lose anyone close to you, you kind of, you learn a lot and you learn how to live differently after that and find out what's really important in life versus that fight was not important and it was not worth me being irritated about, you know? So now with, like, my husband, Jacob, is completely different. Like, my relationship with him is completely different because I've learned so many things from what I did when Blake was alive that I don't want that to happen again. So if even Jacob leaves to go to the grocery store, you better believe I am not going to be irritated with him when he leaves the house. It's just like that type of thing, you know?
Yeah,
so
for sure. What was this is like a really complex situation, and, like, what were your emotions towards God as you're walking through this, like, super difficult time?
Before this happened, you know, I grew up in the church. I had a relationship with Christ my entire life. I considered myself a prayer warrior. I felt like I was a really good girl with my prayer time with God, and I talked to him all the time. And
What's that book?
what?
The Prayer Warrior book. Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
Whatever. Sorry. Go ahead.
I just felt like I was doing all the right things with my relationship with him, you know, and I was talking to him all the time. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
To have a relationship with God, you're supposed to talk to him like he's in the room with you, like he's a friend. And I felt like I did. And every single night before I went to bed, even that night that I was irritated, like, I prayed for Blake. I was like, God, I pray that you walk with him every step he takes tonight. I hope that you protect him. I pray for your angels to walk with him. Like, so many different things. I prayed the same kind of prayer every night. And I was like, good, did my job, you know?
It's so cute, though, by the way.
What? I just felt like I was doing a good job. And so afterwards, it was, I want to say my biggest emotion was confusion. Like, I was just very confused. I had my moment of being angry at God, but it was very fleeting. I wouldn't say that I was overly angry at him that he allowed this to happen. And I never blamed him. I never said, you took him, because he didn't. He just allowed it to happen. And I was just really confused. I was like, I'm a good person. And Blake was an even better person, I feel like. And I prayed for him every night, and we had a relationship, and he did good things, and he was a good cop. Why would you allow a really good cop? Not that, other cops are lower, but that's how you think. You're like, he was a really good cop. He could have done years and years of more good work. Like, why mine? Like, why my family? So it was more of a long period of confusion, and it took me a really long time to pray again. Not that I ever left God or left my relationship with him. It took me a really long time to talk to him like I talked to him before.
Yeah. Did you talk to him like that, though?
Like that? Yeah. That's how I talk to him. Like, hey. Like,
I think that's exactly what you're supposed to do.
You should, he's a person. He's there. He's with us. And that's the easiest way. You don't have to be, in order to pray, you don't have to be like, our Father who art in heaven. It's like the story of Martha,
right? It's like, if you would have been here.
Yeah, exactly.
My brother wouldn't have died.
100%.
If you would have been here, and she has that like conversation with Jesus where she's kind of like jumping up Jesus's butt a little bit.
Yes, just a little.
Like, why are you so late? Like, I called for you long ago. Like, why did you just not get here? Like,
exactly.
That exact conversation. Like, that's what I picture you as, like, sitting in a room, like, asking God these questions. Of, like,
no, there were many times that I like, screamed it. I was just like, I don't understand. Like, what is happening? And I would say it. I'm just like, I don't, what am I supposed to do with my life now? Now it's completely different. And what is the point of this? Like, I didn't see the point of his death. Like, I didn't, and I still don't. Like, I think I'll always be asking, why did we completely have to do that? Like, I feel like he still could have done a lot more, but afterwards, in the years afterwards, it's been 7.5 years.
Has it really been 7.5 years?
It has been. I know. It feels like yesterday, but it feels like long ago too. It's weird. But I just feel like in those years, I've been told so many stories, and I've just seen the goodness that came out of his death. And I'm not saying that in like morbid. I'm just saying I've met so many people that started their life over with Christ again because of Blake's story, not even because they knew him, but because they watched his funeral on the TV. And they're like, oh my gosh, I need to get into church again. And they went to church, and they're on fire for Christ. Like, those are the things that I heard afterwards. Or the many stories that, I would get messages like, oh my gosh, Blake came to my house. We had a call and a domestic, and he sat with my little boy, and all these different things. And I'm just seeing the fruit from his life, from when he was alive, and from his death.
Yeah.
And that's what gives me peace and comfort, knowing that even his death could affect people and welcome them into the kingdom of Christ, Whereas if he was still alive today, maybe those people would still be lost, and not where they are today. So that's what I choose to feel.
God won't waste your pain type situation.
Yes. I think that there is a purpose, and I think he has plans for all of it, for our pain and for our joy in everyday life. So it's just very painful still. And we're human, so it's gonna be hurtful and painful, and you just have to make the choice to believe the good instead of the bad.
Yeah, one thing that I think that even for me, like, that I've taken away from Blake is seeing, I read something that you posted. This is a good thing about social media. I read something that you posted about, like, forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the person's name. I can't remember his name. The kid.
Yeah.
Who shot Blake. Like, I read that post that you posted. Like, I don't know. It wasn't even that long ago, I don't think.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, maybe.
How'd you come to this? Like, how'd you come to that? Like,
well, it wasn't immediate. But I never really.
What were your original emotions?
Yeah, I'll go there. I never was really angry at him either. I didn't see him as like a villain. Like, I didn't. You see a lot of these families that go through things like this, and they automatically like center all their anger at that person, right? And to be fair, you can center your anger at that person because that person took something really big from you. But at the same time, holding on to that anger and that bitterness is only going to affect you. It doesn't affect that person. It doesn't affect them. They don't even care, probably, But it took me a while to make the conscious decision to be like, I forgive him. Like, I know that's really hard to say and feel, but it did take a lot of prayer once I got praying again, once I felt like I could talk to God again. Yeah. And I felt like I was just comforted in everything else that was going on versus that. And I also wanted to see justice, like I think that he deserved to have justice for what happened, but I also didn't wish ill will against him, I should say. So like whenever we got to the victim impact statements, at this point I'm at a good point, like I have found joy again,
How long between the shooting was that whenever the trial happened?
About 3 years. Okay. I don't even know if it was quite 3 years, almost 3 years. Maybe not, so like 2.5 years. Yeah, like 2.5 years. I'd have to think about that, but it felt like an eternity. But our lawyers were so great. They kept us informed on everything. And at one point, so Bob McCullough was going to be the prosecuting attorney, right? And which is, if anyone knows, he was a big prosecuting attorney in St. Louis. Yeah. Had a lot of cop cases. Big deal. Yeah, he was a big name. And we were like, oh, good, we got Bob. He's going to like prosecute. We're going to win this, And so when it came to what they were going to charge him with and what they were going to seek as in like punishment, he did have us come in and he said he didn't really ask us what we wanted. Did we want him to go for the death penalty or did we want life in prison or whatever? He was just like, this is what we're going to do because this is the evidence and blah, blah, blah. And which ended up being they were going to seek life in prison with no parole. And at that point, I had never really had to think about, do I want him to die for this? Do I want him to, is it an eye for an eye situation? And a lot of people are kind of torn. A lot of Christians are torn between what they should choose. And I felt like at that point, because I hadn't quite gotten to forgiveness era yet, I was like, I think that an eye for an eye is what it should be. So I was kind of irritated at Bob at that point because he didn't really even ask us what he wanted. He just kind of told us what they were going for. But okay, that meeting's over, and then, more time before the trial. And then in that time period is when I was able to forgive him, move forward, because I realized, like, I'm not going to find any kind of peace within my heart in this situation if I don't allow it to leave my heart and allow it to pass, and that requires forgiving the person who did this. And that affects me. And when I get to heaven, I want God to look at me and be like, well done. You forgave the person who killed your husband. Points to you. Like, that's what I want,
Points to you, like,
points to you.
Yeah, 1 point Elizabeth.
Yes. So that's what I would prefer. So we did get to the sentencing. He was convicted, so he was going to get life in prison with no parole, but I still got to give my victim impact statement, as well as Blake's mom. Johnny did.
I'm sure that was a difficult thing to
It was hard.
Through.
It was hard. I went last, so I listened to everybody's statements, and, like, understandably so, everyone was angry. So when they talked, they were angry at him, and they were like, I hope you burn in hell. Like, I hope you never have a joyful moment in your life again. And you understand that because of who he is, what he has done, what he's taken. And I didn't even have a speech written down or anything. I didn't plan on being up there for very long. And I got up there and I was like, God, before I got up there, I was like, God, just lead me in what you want me to say. Like, be there with me, help me put the right words out to this whole room, And the judge said, you can't address him to his face. Like, I wasn't able to, like, turn and look at him and tell him, so I had to tell the judge as if I was talking to him. Does that make sense? I don't know why she did that.
Why did they do that?
She didn't, none of us were allowed to face him and say it. Like, we couldn't even, like, really address him. So how I had to word it to her was, I hope he knows, and I want him to know. So I couldn't be like, Trenton, which is his name, Trenton, I hate you. Like, I can't say that, So I got up there and I just immediately, I didn't even plan on saying I forgive you. I didn't have a plan. I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'll get up there, and I truly believe that God helped me through that. And it just came so easily out of my mouth that, listen, I want him to know that I forgive him. I have truly forgiven him in my heart. I know Blake forgave him the moment he did it because that's who Blake was. And most importantly, God has forgiven him. And now he needs to forgive himself. And I was like, unlike everybody else, I don't hope you go to hell. I hope that you find Jesus behind those bars. Like, I hope that you have a revival moment and that you turn your life for God so that you can go to heaven too, where
Blake can embrace you, you know, which was hard, but everybody like gasped. Like some people were like,
this is like one of the coolest things I've ever heard in my life.
Thanks.
I'm serious.
I feel like it was mixed. Like some people were like, oh, you just said you hope he goes to heaven. And then other people were like, oh my gosh, you hope he goes to heaven. So it's kind of like half and half, but.
Well, that idea that you talked about earlier is like, as a Christian, like, do you balance like the death penalty and an eye for an eye type situation? And like every time I think about that, I think about if God held me to that standard, you know? Like,
yeah.
If God held me to the standard of everything that I've ever done bad, that he was going to hold me accountable for it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I'd ever be able to be in his presence, right? It's like, because I'm just broken.
Right.
You know?
And
like,
in the Bible, God says one sin is not worse than the other.
Yeah.
And that includes, like, why is he more sinful than I am, who has lied before and sinned daily? You know, we're humans. So exactly what you said, like God would hold me to the same standard. And I know a lot of people don't understand that, where, oh, why is murder not worse than lying? You know, but in God's eyes, if you truly, oh my gosh,
you're fine.
If you truly believe in him and repent and you are sorry for what you've done, you can still enter the kingdom of heaven, you know, just like the sinner on the cross next to him that asked, I want to go with you.
Yeah.
And he immediately forgave him right then. So same situation.
It's just like, it's one thing for me to know that God feels that way, but it's another thing for me to see like a person live that out, especially at like the standard of like, you know, like you went through something super traumatic and you got like the love of your life snatched away from you. And like for you to be able to 2.5 years later, like forgive the person, like you said, like I truly forgive you in my heart, for you to be able to work through that to the point that you're willing to provide that forgiveness, not only for him, but for yourself.
Yeah.
It's just really inspiring that, you know, like you just don't see that very often in today's world.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not an easy path. And a lot of that has to do with like making the choice. A lot of people don't even want to make that choice. A lot of people don't want to heal. Honestly, a lot of people don't want to get out of their anger and sadness because they feel like holding on to that is holding on to their person. And you can allow that to leave your heart without letting your person leave your heart too. That's what a lot of people don't understand with grief and healing, is that just because I have chosen to forgive or chosen to be happy again does not lessen my love for Blake or lessen my passion for our marriage. And I know that people... I am a widow. I feel like I'll always be a widow, but I'm also Blake's wife, and I don't think I'll ever not be his wife. Like, I still consider him my husband. Like, it never, he's still my husband. He always will be. It's just different. So allowing it and making that choice within your heart is a big step to healing and being happy again. I chose to be happy again. I wanted to be happy again. I have a lot of life to live, and I don't want to live it in a dark corner of my house.
Yeah.
Being sad, when Blake definitely wouldn't have wanted that. What? He told me to remarry. I told him to remarry as long as he's good to Malachi, kind of thing, you know? So it's
I struggle
choice.
with that, man. I told my wife, I was like, I don't know if I want you to get remarried. I don't know, like the egotistical side of myself.
It's your human side, and that's okay. I think I would have had that same feeling too, but as I think it's something that you shouldn't just jump into another relationship. I think that it has to be perfect. And especially if you have kids involved, like it has to be perfect, and you have to have complete peace. And that's what I had with Jacob. And I knew that Jacob was supposed to be in my life. Yeah. And now I just have a different kind of love with him.
How did you balance it?
Like what?
Like in the beginning, how did you balance like this new relationship and like Blake, and like how did you It seems like it would be such a hard thing to...
Because of who Jacob is, he made it really easy. I don't want to make it sound fairy tale or anything, but it kind of is. Like, he is a really good human, and his personality was perfect and made for this position in my life, which is he's the most understanding and compassionate guy I've ever met when it comes to all of my grief. Like, he has never hesitated one moment when I'm crying or when I'm having a hard moment to support me, to tell me to talk about it. He's never, ever told me not to talk about Blake. He asks about Blake. We talk about Blake. He has a great relationship with Peggy and Dick. Like, I couldn't get better. Like, I feel like he's top tier for someone in my position. And he loves Malachi like Malachi is his own child and like his own blood. So I think it's his personality. And I prayed for that. I knew after Blake passed, I wasn't thinking about dating. Not at all. Like I didn't know what I was going to do for a long time. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. But as soon as like I wasn't crying every single day and I wasn't crying every other 10 minutes because that's how it is for like the first year, you know, you're crying every day for like 2 hours like that. It was rough. I've never cried so much in my life. You cry until nothing comes out. Like your body cannot produce tears any longer and then you're just dry crying. Yeah. So once I got out of that stage and I was finding my purpose in life again, which was I want to go back to work and I'm a mom, then you start to find a new normal and you start to find new things to do and your brain starts to heal a little bit and your heart starts to heal a little bit. And then that's whenever, if you feel comfortable, if you want to date it again, go for it. I feel like everybody has their own timeline. Mm-hmm. I know widows that remarried. I know widows that are like, I'm never getting married again. So it just depends on your situation, who you are, and what you feel like God wants for your life. So
you said as your brain starts to heal,
yeah.
What are some of the things, like a lot of what we try and do at 1078 is kind of like, my goal is to end that like tough guy, like police officer, like macho man stigma of like you just have to suck everything up and just like move past everything. Like that's not who I am as a person, and I don't think that's who most of us are.
Right.
Most police officers are as a person. I just think it's the stigma that we're caught in, which results in, you know, I don't know, I think last year was like 135 self-reported police officer suicides, which is
Isn't
insane.
It one of the highest? Like it's one of the highest jobs for suicide rates, right?
Yeah. It's so depending on the year, it's around 3 times as high as officers killed in the line of duty. And it's like at the hands of our own guns. Like we have guys that are killing themselves at a rate that's just insane. And I think it's because like for you, it's like you knew that you needed to take certain steps to take care of yourself to start that healing process. And like police officers are helpers, but they're not very good at helping themselves.
Right.
So like part of our goal is to end that. And so, what were the steps that you took? Like, did you do counseling? I like how pastor or like?
So I have not surprisingly done any kind of counseling yet. And I don't know if I've ever said that before. I never felt like...
If you haven't done any counseling and you're saying the things that you've said so far, like you've said some of the most mature things I've heard come out of a person's mouth in a very long time.
Well, thank you. I feel like I can't claim that's from me. I truly believe it's from God and studying the Bible and just really running to God in all of those situations. And I had a really good crew behind me. Like my family is very supportive. My friends, like I had a really, really good support system, which I know not everybody has when these types of situations happen. So that's where your organization would come in really helpful. Also, in police-related stuff, Backstoppers does offer counseling. I had many, many, many avenues that I could have taken for counseling, and I can still take. I just never felt... not really the need, but the drive to do it, because honestly, when I talk about it, it's really hard. Yeah. And when you go to someone, you're going to have to reopen every single wound that you've worked so many years to heal. And thankfully, I think I've healed a lot of those wounds on my own, and going back to someone is going to reopen them. Yeah. It is. And my mom literally just said this day before yesterday. My grandmother's in the hospital, and she's like, Elizabeth, because I was telling her it's traumatic. It's a little... traumatizing for me because I'm back in a hospital scene, like it's death. It's just a lot. Yeah. So my mom said, she's like, Elizabeth, have you gone to counseling? You said like 6 months ago you're going to go. And I was like, I haven't. And I think I would benefit. And I do want to go. And
Let's hook you up with Annette.
Yeah, I know.
Awesome
okay,
connection.
so I love what Annette does, but also... it's just opening that wound for me and then for her too, because that would be hard for her. And I know that she does that for her job. I'm just trying to think of her and thinking of the other person, and I don't want to do that to them. And it's just a really weird space that I'm in for it. Maybe one day. That's what I say. And that's what I say.
There's no rush. Like, maybe, you do it when you want to do it.
Yeah, maybe one day. I don't know. It's more of like talking about things that I also have to deal with post losing Blake. It's not even like his incident anymore. It's more of... things in my current marriage, not not per se with Jacob, but how we do things, I guess, and like things that I like situations with like Blake's parents and how it triggers me on certain things. And I'm sure they're triggered. They come and watch our kids once a week. They're so wonderful. Like they watch my girls too. They're so great. But can you imagine how bittersweet that is for them? And then like I still go to like so many police events a year. We always go to the memorial breakfasts. We go to all these fundraisers, and all of those are trauma. And even though I'm there and I have a smile on my face, you know, and I look really happy, which I am happy, but it's also, I can't wait to leave. I can't wait to get out of this room because there's literally 500 cops with Blake's uniform on right now. Oh, you know, and that's...
Never even thought about that.
Yeah, it's those type of things. And everybody means well. People will come up and be like, oh, I just miss him so much, and his laugh. And I'm like, I'm glad you do. I do too. Believe me, like, let's go get some coffee. You know, like, let's do something else. So anyway, like, those are the types of things, like, I would want to talk about afterwards and figure out.
Oh man, I never even thought about like every time you go to a police event, you're seeing people wear the same uniform.
I'm seeing his face everywhere. He's also got he's on every wall in every department. You know, people. Oh my gosh, someone just messaged me on Instagram last week, and she said, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you so much. My fiance is in class 209 right now, which is in the academy. She's like, and he just talked so much about Blake the other day because the teachers are talking about Blake. They use Blake and they just say how dedicated he was. They just go on and on about Blake. And she's like, I just think it's so wonderful. They're still talking about him. And then I'm like, I know, you know, as I'm crying on the other side of my Instagram, I'm like, thanks for telling me, you know, so I'm like a mess. So just things like that will pop up, and people always mean well, and it's always wonderful, and I welcome those stories, but it's also very triggering and very hard, no matter what. I mean, it's going to be 30 years down the road, and someone's going to tell me a story, and I'm still going to be triggered because I still love him, and I always will, and it's always going to be somewhat painful. It just gets a little easier to deal with each year, you know?
Yeah.
So.
The fact that you like have to like preface though, that like, I still love him. It's like, you know, like.
Oh, you don't know what I have been through in the last 7.5 years when it comes to people judging. It is rough. When I first announced my relationship with Jacob, it was, that's the bad side of social media and the news and things like that, because
I feel like the news, like, you were everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you were on, like, I felt like I knew you, but I didn't know you, you know what I mean? Like, you were just, like, posted on so much. You're almost like St. Louis's, like, wife. You know, like, everybody was like,
yep.
You know, like, just, like, this story that I said, like, you know, watching you, you know, carry your son in, and he's like, daddy, daddy, daddy. It's like, that wasn't just me that's seen that. That's like everybody in this whole region seen that. And everybody felt like they knew you.
Yeah.
And like they could see how genuinely that you loved Blake.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say
no,
love,
you're good.
And I just like, I don't know. It's like, why? I know where you're going with this. Like how many people have been like disrespectful to you, and like you said, like, they don't know you. They don't really know you.
Right. They just see what's on the news.
And they don't really know Blake either. Like,
right.
Like you said, like, Blake and I have already had this conversation. Like,
right.
We sat down and we talked to each other about, like, hey, this is what I want. This is, like, and for other people that don't have anything to do with this.
Yeah. There's a lot of online keyboard warriors that need to put their nose into everything. For the most part, people were really good. But anytime, like, something, you know, like the trial's coming up, so there would be a news story on it, like, oh, the trial's next week or something. And then if you go in and read the comments, like, when they say don't read the comments, you really shouldn't read the comments. Yeah, you need to listen to
Joe Rogan. You don't read the comments, right?
I had to. I was like, I got to read it. But the depths that some of these people will go to for people they don't know, like, they called him they called Blake many bad names, like that effing pig, he deserved to die, and his wife deserves to be raped, like all these really bad things.
Goodness.
Like every cop should die, like things like that over and over and over. And then whenever I like put on my social media so Jacob and I actually we met, and then we got married, we got engaged 3 months later and married 3 days later. So we were married 3 months after. I just knew. It was one of those, like, so peaceful, so at home. Like, I just knew, and it's been wonderful ever since. So, but whenever we got married before, I think I posted anything about it 3 months later, because also the trial was about to happen. Like, that was within that next 4 or 5 months.
Really?
So I didn't want anything to mess with the trial or people talking about the trial or anything like that. But man, people just, they're mean. Some people are really, really, really mean. And to this day, like, man, I posted, one of my videos went viral, and it was the one I was like introducing myself in it. I'm working out, but it was like, I'm Elizabeth. Like, my dad died when I was 21. You know, my husband died.
Oh, I think I've seen that.
That one. I delete them because I catch them now, the comments, the bad ones, because people, you know, they'll see it on their, it went viral, so you're going to get really good comments and you're going to get really bad ones. So, like, one guy was
like you were working on, it was like a little blurb, like
yeah, like
a line underneath the line underneath the line.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. And then, like, last week, a comment on it was like, it popped up, and I don't know, I didn't see it for a while, so it was on there for like a couple hours before I saw it, and it was like, oh, so you're out effing another man and already got other kids with him too? Like, you must have never loved your pig of a husband. Yeah. I'm like, what? First off, you don't know me. Yeah. Like, this is outrageous. And, you know, back like 7.5 years ago, that would have like torn me apart.
Meanwhile, I think like shortly after that, or right before that, you posted a video like bawling your eyes out, like something about Blake.
People don't get it. They don't care either. It's just what they feel in the moment, and they feel like they have to say it. I don't know. It's fine. I deleted it. I showed Jacob. I was like, hey, apparently we were effing and having kids, and I don't love my husband. And he laughed about it, because now it's just funny. It doesn't bother me. Now I'm just like, you don't know me. You didn't know Blake. You don't know the situation. So bye, blocked.
With Malachi getting older, like, do you get little nuggets of Blake in there?
Oh, 100%. He's my twin in looks. Like, he looks just like me, exactly like me, minus his ears. They're definitely Blake's, but he like functions like Blake. So Blake was really smart, and he grew up like tinkering with things and always wanting to know. Like, I have so many stories from Dick about it, how he would take apart like a full radio and then put it back together. And Malachi does the exact same thing. He like wants to know how this works and this works. So yes, he functions like Blake. So that it's kind of bittersweet, because he'll say something or do something. I'm like, huh. That was like sad, like a little too much, you know, like, made me sad, you know, but it's a good thing. And he has a really good relationship when it comes to Blake, and, you know, he knows he's in heaven. He's finally at the age, I want to say the last like couple years, he's really matured. He's now 9.5, so he'll be 10. The last couple years is when he really understood what happened. And got it, because I'll take him to the memorial breakfast and stuff with me, and before the last couple of years, he would just be there and like, cops, you know? And then the last couple of years, he's like bawled his eyes out, cried, and he understands what happens, and now he's like really sad about it. So he's getting it, and now he understands that's my dad. He made a huge sacrifice. You know, he was this great cop. We talk about him all the time. Peggy and Dick talk about him. His pictures are everywhere, you know, so he definitely knows what happened now. When he was younger, I wanted to protect him from it. Like, I didn't even want people talking about how Blake died in front of him, because it's traumatic and it was morbid. And I don't need my 5-year-old saying, my daddy was shot in the face, you know, or whatever. And one of his cousins ended up saying it to him when he was like 5. And he said, he's like, yeah, your daddy was shot in the face. Like, just like that. And Malachi came to me, he's like, huh. And he didn't really get it, because he was like, huh, so-and-so said my daddy in heaven was shot in the face by some bad guy. And I was like, my face. I was mortified. I was so angry. And this cousin was only like 2 years older, so like 7. What? I had to have a conversation with mom, the mom of the cousin, and say like, why are you telling your 7-year-old the details of what happened, and then allowing him to say it to my 5-year-old? You know, I haven't even had that conversation yet. So it's been hard whenever you're a parent of a child who's lost a parent in a trauma way like that. you just want to protect their little brains and you want to protect their little hearts, because you don't want them growing up with issues and having to go to counseling right out of, 10 years old. So I've been trying to protect him, and I think that we are at a really good, healthy spot for him, because he's like, yeah, my daddy in heaven. So he calls Jacob dad. He's only known Jacob as dad. He started calling him dad a long time ago on his own, and he knows him as dad, but he also knows, yeah, I have a dad in heaven. He was this awesome cop, and he knows all of the details about it, and he's proud to tell people about it. He told his teacher and his whole class about it this year, and the teacher was like, I'm so sorry. She had to have a meeting with me. She's like, I didn't realize Malachi got up and said this entire situation. I'm like, goodness. Just let me tell Malachi to calm down on that. We can say it in a different way, Yeah. But yeah, I think he's at a healthy spot.
Well, how was it like walking him through his, telling him as he got older what happened? Was it super difficult on you?
Yes. No, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But, and to watch your little perfect little human, just be completely crushed and sad and realize what happened, it's so hard. It's so difficult. And I think he's going to go through stages as he gets older and he starts maturing even more. He's going to go through hormones, he's going to become a man, and it's going to be hard at different stages. But I want to keep everything with Blake positive. So I don't want to be at his high school graduation and be like, I wish your dad hadn't got shot when you were 2 and would be here. No, I'll be like, you know what? Your dad's watching you from heaven. He's so proud of you. Yeah. We're proud of you. This is a joyous day. That's what we want it to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. As long as he doesn't want to become a cop.
He does. So
he does.
We're going to try and steer him the other direction. Currently, it goes back and forth. He for the most part, most of the time, it's cop. Sometimes it's been fireman, and then
be a fireman.
Yeah, he said teacher earlier this year, and I was like, yes.
That's a good one.
What teacher? He's like, first grade. I was like, great, you go be a first grade teacher. It's so safe, So real. Anyway, but then it was back to cop again. So he's growing up in it, Yeah. Everyone around him, all of our friends, everybody's a cop.
Yeah, from your dad on, your dad, your brother.
Blake's best friend, he's a cop currently, So. We'll see. We'll see. Let's not.
So what have you guys been up to now? I've seen you obviously you guys have your gym now.
Mm-hmm. So Jacob had, before we got together, so we've been married 5 years now. Before we got together, he had been training athletes for athletic performance his entire life, straight out of college and being a globetrotter. So, but he'd been doing it on the side.
Such a being a globetrotter.
He did it for a year, and I think it's really cool.
It is really cool.
I'll usually tell the story. He doesn't bring it up, and he won't.
Should definitely bring it up.
That's what I say.
It's pretty cool.
He won't talk about the dunk contest on his own either. I'm like, you literally had a 50-inch vertical, and you're a 5'11" man. That is outrageous, Wow. As we were watching the dunk contest last night for the NBA, and we're just giddy or whatever. But anyway, so he was a globetrotter. He liked it for a little bit, but he is a really big introvert. He does not like being the center of attention. He doesn't like dancing in front of people. And the Globetrotters, it's a show, and it's entertainment, and it's basketball, but it's a show. And they're on the road 9 months out of the year. So he was not able to have a relationship, and he wanted to have a relationship. He wanted to be married a long time ago, and it just didn't happen, And so he was like, I'm not doing that. So then he quit the Globetrotters after the first year, and he actually started training out in North Carolina in Raleigh, and he was training Duke and UNC basketball players for performance. He did that for a little bit, 3 or 4 years, and then he ended up moving home and just doing it at home so that he was closer to family and all of that. And then we met, and he was still doing it a little bit on the side, just supporting himself. He didn't really make it a total big business. He had, I don't know, 30 athletes that he was training or whatever, spaced out. But then he and I got together, and the space that he was in, what is our gym now, but someone owned it before, and it was kind of this like rough looking CrossFit gym. It was gross. It was dirty. And Jacob was renting a little corner of it from the guy. And something happened with the guy and he got kicked out. We're in a sportsplex. So the gym is in like a sportsplex and there's like volleyball courts and basketball courts all around us. And they were like, would you like to take over the space? And Jacob and I were like, okay, let's do that. And then we completely rebranded the whole thing, got all the new equipment and everything and turned it into our own gym and then branded it Tucker Athletic Performance. And now for the last 4.5 years, we've been training athletes ages 10 to 22 for athletic performance.
How has the whole working out thing been on for your mental health? That's like a huge thing for me. I have to like work out on a regular basis or else I'll lose my mind.
Oh, 100%. I'm on that train with you. Like, absolutely. Fitness did play a huge role in coping afterwards because, it's a really, really big avenue to work out some of your emotions. You go in the gym and it's just you in the gym for an hour, 2 hours, however long you're in there. And yeah, fitness was a really big part and became an even bigger part whenever I met Jacob. So
yeah, so we partnered with Integrity Fitness, if you know who they are.
Oh, cool.
John Morris used to be a cop.
Okay.
So now every officer that we support that's involved in an officer-involved shooting, they get a month free at the gym and personal training.
Nice.
Just because you never have a month to take care of yourself.
No.
Like as an adult and being a policeman,
No.
you never have a month where you can like really focus on, working out. And we did that with the jiu-jitsu club as well. So now they get
neat.
a month free of jiu-jitsu because it's really hard to think about anything when somebody's trying to strangle you other than not getting strangled.
right.
So it's like a little bit of a reprieve and a little bit of a break. But yeah, for sure. I'm on the same. I have to. If I don't work out, I just start feeling like antsy.
I know.
Anxious
and within your job, I feel like you should be like required to work out. I feel like you need to be in a certain kind of shape to do your job. So they're opening the new precinct over in South County. So the precinct Blake was in was like a hole in the wall. It was so run down. The building was old and gross. Like anyway, so they just built a new building and they gave us a tour through it and they have my favorite part, obviously, and a whole gym. They built a
like
gym.
Like a state-of-the-art gym. Yeah.
It's probably like the size of this room. There's mirrors, there's TVs, and there's a decent amount of equipment within there that their officers are going to be able to use 24/7. I'm like, this is a great idea. It's the only precinct in St. Louis County that has one.
Really?
That has a gym inside the precinct. It's beautiful. I was like, every precinct needs this.
Yeah, man. Like, why? Cops are supposed to be like athletic and in shape, and not just that. Like, there's a whole mental health side of things. Like, everybody wants cops to be like special operators. When the police show up to your house, you want the best possible cop that you can get. Yeah, you're not always going to get it, and you're really not going to get it unless we like invest back into police officers. So give them gyms to work out in, and give them a counselor to talk to on a regular basis, and make sure they're not eating junk all the time. Like.
Agreed.
None of that happens.
Right.
Like, if you want special operators, then you have to like invest in them like they're special operators.
Right. And this is like I said earlier, like when my dad was a cop, like in the 80s, 90s, early thousands, the mental part of it is still hard, but more of like how criminals or bad guys would view law enforcement was a lot different. So they had a certain amount of respect or fear of officers that nowadays you don't get. So you're having to deal with a lot of different mental issues dealing with these guys versus what like my dad had to, like back in my dad's day, they took out a baton and they don't get reprimanded for hitting the guy because the guy like spit on him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you definitely feel like you have to constantly be the bigger person. Like you're constantly having to like.
It's like you're dealing with children all the time.
Yeah, you can say that about my wife, and you can say that about my kids. And you can say like, and I'm just gonna sit here.
I can't do that. I couldn't be
I'm
a
big
cop.
boy.
I couldn't do it.
I love my job. I don't want to get fired.
I'm a good person.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of it. Did you start a jewelry company?
It's like a little side business that I'm doing with my girlfriend, Lauren. It's called Feather and Arrow, and yeah, we make some like little bracelets or whatever that are very trendy right now. They're like clay beaded bracelets. Yeah, they're fun. We have a lot of cop wives and fire wives that love them, and they get their like DSNs on them and stuff. So yeah, they're fun. Yeah,
I'll start sharing that. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, that's sweet.
That's a really good idea to like.
Yeah, I mean, I like it.
Yeah, I'll get Kate one.
Okay.
Well, I think we've went through just about everything. I just want to thank you for everything that you're doing for our community. You know, like, even if you don't realize that you're doing stuff for our community, you really are. You know, like, you represent our community very well. I appreciate being willing to kind of share your story. And, like, I do it this way for a reason, because I want people to realize that, like, there's humans behind all of this.
Yeah.
Like, there's humans behind. My wife is a human. You know, I'm a human.
Right.
Cops are human. And to hear you tell your story and to be willing to share so much of it, and the emotion that's behind it, you know, how long, 7.5 years you know, after is like
a lot.
You know, it's like, people need to see this side of things. So I know, I'm sorry that, like, you had to tell the story, but at the same time, I really appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable and share that story. And hopefully, you know, this can impact some lives and even some police officers, and hopefully the normal person that listens to this and doesn't really realize exactly what.
Absolutely. I'll always share it. I'll always, and the point behind that is, if I can help anyone that could be in my situation or has been in my situation, like, then I would have won. You know, like, if I can help one person change their attitude about how they let their cop leave at night, or even they're just a regular person leave at night, then I've won. Because I'm just living from my own life experience. There's so much that I learned to change and some things to keep the same. And so I hope my story helps.
Yeah, I have not heard someone talk that maturely about something so difficult, probably ever. You know, like, for the fact that you're willing to offer that grace and that forgiveness, the same grace and mercy that we ask God for, and you're willing to. It's easy to say that. You know, it's easy to, like, say, like, oh, well, God gives me grace and mercy, but it's another thing to, like, be willing to share that grace and mercy with other people, and for you to try to forgive the person who took, you know, your person. And I don't know, it's just it's been an absolute delight, and I'm walking out of this interview with a bigger heart than when I came into it.
Good.
And so
Thank you.
You know, I just really appreciate your willingness to share it, and you know, we'll have to, I won't bring it to a fundraiser, though, because I won't make everybody come to you.
Stop. I didn't mean it in negative ways. More just like, I love doing it.
It makes sense. It makes sense, though. It's like, every time you see a police officer, every time you go to one of these things, you go, like, memorial, like a minute version of this is, every time I hear those bagpipes, like, I can't stand it. Like,
same.
I cannot stand that
It's
sound.
so hard.
Like, and they play it at all
Everything.
These events.
Yeah, all of it.
Like, you go to an event and they play it, and it's like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Nope.
Like,
Nope,
stop
nope,
playing those things, man.
No.
I'm about to freak out. I hate those.
I think the worst part was when we went to Cop Week in Washington, D.C. for the first time, which was after we lost Blake. So it was the May after that October. Yeah. That was probably one of the other, like, 4 times in my life that it was the most difficult week ever because of everything that you see there, which I think every cop should go to that. It was
I've
amazing.
never been. I want to go there.
Oh my gosh. It's just an experience like no other. It's so humbling, and it's the respect that you see for police there is just out of this world. I think it's wonderful. But they play the bagpipes at everything there, and they do the candlelight vigil, and that was really cool. And then afterwards too, after everything happened with Blake, I got invited to go out to DC, and that was even cool too, because in that time frame, that was like after Ferguson or whatever. Blake was in Ferguson too. That was still coming off of that. Everybody hates cops right now, and they look really, really bad to everybody. So to go to DC and see how much respect they actually have for the men and women in blue was very, very humbling and awesome.
Yeah, it is. Like, you know, sometimes I feel like we got it even worse here, you know, because we're so close, and it's like it's like, I don't know.
That was rough.
It was like we were the epicenter of, like, civil rights and justice.
I know, it was rough.
It's like, and even now being a cop in this area,
I know,
we're just now getting back to some sense of, like, normal.
I know.
It's so.
It shouldn't have taken that long.
No,
man.
It should have never went down the way that it did.
No.
You know, like, that's just. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, people and politicians and whatever going to blow things whatever way they need to make it benefit them. So, I don't want to get into all that craziness, but I won't take up any more of your time. I just really appreciate it. And if you guys ever need anything, I'm going to give my wife needs your number. You're literally.
Do it. I'd love to talk to her. 100%.
She'd love to. I tried to get her to do this interview.
Okay.
I wanted her, so my goal is for my wife to interview other wives of police officers. I just think it would be really cool.
Yeah.
She's just a little camera shy, so.
That's like
I was like, babe, there's nobody else in the room but the person you're talking to. After 5 minutes, you forget that you're
on
being
camera
recorded and that you're talking into a microphone.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, I'm working on it. But so thank you, and
thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
If you ever need anything, don't ever hesitate. The Blue family is behind you guys forever.
I love it.
One thing that stuck out to me whenever I talked to Annette was that she said something about her daughter wanting police officers at her wedding.
Aww.
Yeah, and I was like, I'll be there for sure. It's like, it's just, you guys are forever tied to us, and your son is forever tied to our community.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Anything that we could ever do to serve you guys.
Thank you.
We'd love to.
Thank you. We know it. We love it.
Alrighty. Thanks for hanging in there to the end of the episode. I really appreciate you guys listening. One thing that our organization has kind of been struggling with is getting notified of officers who have been involved in officer-involved shootings. One way that we're trying to combat that is if you go to our website, www.1078project.com, you will see that we've added a place for our audience to refer officers. So if you are aware of a police officer who's been involved in an officer-involved shooting, you can go to our website, you put in their name, the department that they work for, and as much information as you have about them, whether they have kids, how many kids they have, if they're married. It just helps us design the box to the best of our ability to make sure we're giving them as many resources as we can. Also, if you're trying to support the 1078 Project, you can go to our website as well. You can see there's a place where you can buy merch. The Crafty Midwest Mommy has been grateful enough to donate all the proceeds for the t-shirts back to us. So if you're looking for a practical way to get a nice t-shirt and also support the cause, you can go to our website as well for that. And with all that being said, I really appreciate all the support. The podcast is doing much better than I thought it would be doing at this point, and that wouldn't be possible without you guys, our audience. So thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next week. The 1078 Project podcast is proudly sponsored by Deemed Fit. Deemed Fit is an activewear and a leisure company created for first responders. Be a part of their movement to instill confidence, motivation, and a willingness to keep pushing forward. Deemed Fit is a first responder-owned company looking to help first responders and their friends stay as physically and mentally fit as possible. Stay Deemed Fit.